the Apache girl enslaved on the farm, until the rancher made her look at the sun. She ran barefoot through the tall grass, feeling the wind brush against her face, and listened to the soft songs of birds hidden in the trees. Her small village, tucked between rolling hills and a sparkling river, was filled with laughter, warmth, and the comforting presence of her family. She lived with her mother, father, and younger brother, each day blending into another like the gentle flow of the river nearby. Life was simple, but it was filled with love and care, the kind that made her feel safe and strong. She helped her mother gather water from the river, played games with her friends in the shade of the tall trees, and learned the stories of her people from her father by the fire each evening. She was curious about everything, the shape of clouds, the patterns of animals' tracks in the soil, and the quiet hum of life that surrounded her. But peace, she would soon learn, is fragile. One morning, as the sun barely kissed the horizon with soft golden light, a sound came from beyond the hills that made the girl freeze in her tracks. It was a sound she had never heard before, loud, harsh, and frightening. The sharp clatter of hooves against the ground and the shouts of unfamiliar voices shattered the calm of the village. Smoke began to rise in the distance, and the smell of fire reached her nose. Fear rippled through her small body, and she clung tightly to her mother's hand. Her father tried to calm the villagers, but the people who had arrived were strong and merciless. They swept through the village with little warning, taking what they wanted and destroying the homes that had once held generations of her family. In a matter of hours, everything she had known vanished. The little girl was separated from her family amidst the chaos. Her cries mingled with the sound of frightened screams all around her, but no one could reach her. She was grabbed by strangers who spoke in a language she did not understand. Their grip was firm and unyielding, and for the first time she felt the true weight of fear pressing against her small chest. She struggled, kicked, and pleaded, but there was no mercy. The world she knew disappeared behind the hills, leaving only uncertainty, pain, and the suffocating thought of never seeing her parents again. The journey that followed was long and exhausting. She was forced to ride in a cart with other captives, her hands bound, her legs cramped, and her stomach aching from hunger. Days blended into nights as the cart rumbled along rough paths. She was surrounded by the cries of others, some children like her, others older, all sharing the same despair. The girl had never traveled far from her home, and every turn of the road felt like a new kind of terror. At night she huddled on the wooden floor of the cart, trying to sleep amidst the pain, but sleep would not come. She thought of her mother's gentle touch, her father's voice telling stories, and the soft laughter of her brother. Tears fell silently, tracing lines down her dusty cheeks. She whispered promises to herself, pledges that she would survive, that she would find a way back, even if she didn't yet know how. Finally, the journey ended at a large farm, a place she had never seen before. The air smelled different here, thick with the scent of animals, soil, and smoke from cooking fires. The farm was vast, stretching far beyond what she could see, with fields that seemed endless and buildings made of wood and stone. She was led inside a large house where the rancher and his family awaited. The girl noticed the difference immediately, their clothing, their language, the way they moved and spoke. Everything felt foreign, frightening, and overwhelming. From the moment she arrived, the girl realized she was no longer free. She was treated as property, given orders without explanation, and expected to follow them without question. The work was hard and relentless. She cleaned rooms, tended to animals, carried water, and labored in the fields from sunrise to sunset. Her hands became raw and sore, her body tired and aching, yet there was no rest for her mind. Every sound reminded her of home, the creak of a door, the neigh of a horse, the rustle of leaves. But instead of comfort, these sounds brought longing and sorrow. She missed the laughter of her friends, the warmth of her family, and the freedom of running through open fields. The rancher was a stern man, his eyes sharp and his words often cold. He did not speak to her gently. His voice carried authority, and disobedience was met with punishment or harsh words. The girl learned quickly that resistance brought more pain, so she learned to obey silently, even as her spirit wrestled with despair. She watched the other workers, some kind, some cruel, and she began to understand the rules of survival in this new world. There were no friends here, no safe corners, and no soft voices to soothe her fears. Her life had been reduced to performing tasks, staying out of trouble, and hiding the sadness that threatened to overwhelm her every day. Despite the hardship, the girl held onto memories of her past. At night, when the world around her was quiet, she would think of her village, of the songs her mother sang, and the stories her father told by the fire. She remembered the way sunlight danced on the river and how the wind carried scents of wildflowers across the hills. These memories became a secret refuge in her mind, a place where she could breathe and feel safe, even if only for a few moments. They reminded her that she was more than the labor she was forced to do, that she had a life, a family, and a past that no one could take from her. Slowly, the girl began to observe the world around her, learning patterns and routines. She noticed the rhythm of the farm, the habits of the animals, and the ways people moved about their day. She learned to avoid the harshest punishment by being careful, watching, and listening. Small acts of quiet defiance brought her tiny victories, hiding a piece of bread, finding a comfortable spot to rest her aching body, or secretly humming the songs she remembered from home. These acts, though small, gave her strength. They reminded her that she was still alive, still thinking, and still dreaming. Yet the heartache remained. Every day, she longed for freedom and the embrace of her family. She often cried in secret, letting the tears fall where no one could see, pouring out the sorrow that weighed on her soul. She did not yet understand how long she would be here, or if she would ever return home. The future seemed uncertain, filled with fear and harsh labor, but still, a small spark of hope burned quietly inside her. A hope that one day she might see her family again, might feel the warmth of her village sun on her face, and run freely through the grass she once knew. Even in the darkest moments, she learned something about herself. She discovered a strength she had never known, a quiet resilience that kept her moving forward despite the cruelty and fear. The farm was harsh, the people around her often unkind, and the work exhausting, but she survived. Each day she endured, each small victory she claimed, reminded her that she was not defeated. She was still a girl with memories, with thoughts, with courage, and with the will to live. The days blurred together, but the girl's spirit, though battered, remained unbroken. She became more aware of herself, of the world around her, and of the possibility that life might hold more than pain and fear. She began to notice small beauties, the way sunlight reflected off the river, the soft rustling of leaves, the quiet moments before dawn when the world was still. These fleeting moments became precious, filling her mind with images of freedom and hope. And though she did not yet know it, her journey on this farm was only the beginning. The hardships she endured, the strength she discovered within herself, and the small sparks of hope she held onto would eventually lead her to a moment that would change everything. A moment that would challenge her, teach her, and awaken a part of her spirit she did not yet know existed. For now she endured, she worked, she remembered, and she waited, holding onto the invisible thread of hope that stretched from the fields of the farm back to her home in the hills, back to her family, and back to the life she had once known. Even in captivity, even in fear, she was still herself, a girl of courage, of dreams, and of resilience. Life on the farm had become the girl's new reality, though it was far from the life she had known in her village. Every morning before the sun had fully risen, she was already awake, her body stiff from the previous day's work. She rose quietly, careful not to disturb the other workers, and prepared herself for the long hours ahead. Each day was a test of endurance, both physically and emotionally. She worked in the fields under the scorching sun, carrying heavy loads of water, gathering crops, and tending to the animals. Her hands were rough and blistered, her feet sore from walking over uneven ground, but she had learned to hide her pain, for showing weakness could invite harsh words or worse. Despite the endless labor, the girl's mind never stopped. She remembered the songs of her mother and the stories her father had told by the fire. These memories became her anchor, a secret world she retreated into when the farm's reality became too cruel. She often hummed softly to herself, barely audible over the sounds of work, imagining the flowing river and the hills of her home. In these moments, she felt a flicker of freedom, a sense of who she truly was beneath the chains of captivity. The other people on the farm were a mix of kindness and cruelty, though neither could replace the love she had lost. Some workers were stern but fair, offering her small comforts like a piece of bread or a kind word when the rancher wasn't watching. Others were harsh, mocking her, giving impossible tasks, or punishing her for minor mistakes. The girl learned quickly that survival required observation as much as effort. She studied the behavior of each person, noting who might help and who might harm her. Through this careful watching, she began to find ways to make her days slightly more bearable. In her limited moments of rest, the girl explored the farm quietly. She discovered hidden corners behind barns, shaded spots under trees, and quiet streams where she could wash her face and hands. These places became her secret sanctuaries, tiny pockets of peace in a life otherwise dominated by labor and fear. She would sit in these hidden spots, letting the sunlight warm her skin, listening to the soft sounds of nature, and feeling, if only briefly, that she still belonged to the world outside the farm. The rancher, the man who owned the farm, was a constant presence, though he rarely showed the same harshness as some of the workers. He was a complex figure, a man of authority and power, yet not entirely cruel. Occasionally he would speak to her, not with anger but with firm guidance. His words were often confusing, sometimes they were harsh, sometimes strangely thoughtful. He seemed to recognize her suffering, though he did not free her or ease her burdens. The girl did not trust him, yet she could not ignore the subtle shifts in his behavior. There were moments when his eyes softened, when he allowed her a brief respite or offered a word of advice. She began to notice these moments, holding onto them as small signs that not all humans were unkind. As the days passed, the girl's spirit began to adapt. She was still filled with longing for her family, but she found ways to assert herself quietly. She memorized the routines of the farm, learning which tasks were assigned when, and how to complete them efficiently. She discovered that small acts of cleverness, carrying an extra bucket of water, feeding the animals just right, or performing tasks ahead of time, earned her brief moments of respect from some workers. These victories, though minor, were powerful. They reminded her that she was not powerless, that she could still influence her surroundings, and that she could survive in this harsh new world. Even in her solitude, the girl found ways to keep her mind active. She observed the behavior of the animals, noticing patterns in their movements and sounds. She watched the birds, learning when they sang and when they were quiet. She studied the sky, noting the changing colors at dawn and dusk, and felt a strange comfort in the predictability of nature. These observations became a form of quiet rebellion against the farm's oppression, a way to remain connected to the life she had lost and to the world she still hoped to reclaim. The girl also began to dream of freedom, though the thought was both painful and exhilarating. She imagined running through the hills near her village, hearing her mother's voice call her name, and feeling the river water splash against her feet. She pictured the faces of her friends, laughing and playing, and the warmth of her father's embrace. These dreams were dangerous, for they reminded her of all she had lost, but they were also essential. They kept her hope alive, nurturing the small flame of courage that refused to be extinguished. At night, when the farm grew quiet and the stars appeared in the sky, the girl would often sit in her small room, thinking about the world beyond the farm. She longed for the night sky of her home, where she had watched the stars with her family and felt a sense of wonder and connection. Here, under the unfamiliar stars, she felt both small and determined. The farm could control her body, but her mind remained free. She could still imagine, still dream, still remember who she was. These quiet moments became her refuge, strengthening her spirit for the days ahead. Despite the hardships, the girl began to notice subtle changes within herself. She became more aware of her own strength, the resilience that had carried her from her village to this new life. She realized that even though she was a captive, she could still choose how to respond to her circumstances. She could feel fear, yes, but she could also act with courage. She could feel sorrow, yes, but she could also cling to hope. These realizations were small at first, barely noticeable, but they grew stronger each day, forming the foundation for a new understanding of herself. The girl's small victories and quiet strength did not go unnoticed. The rancher, in his own way, observed her resilience. He saw the determination in her eyes, the way she worked tirelessly despite exhaustion, and the moments of quiet reflection that hinted at a mind far beyond the labor he forced upon her. Though he did not yet know how to guide her fully, he began to recognize that she possessed a spirit that could not be easily broken. This awareness would later play a crucial role in the next stages of her journey, though at this point, the girl herself did not yet understand the importance of her growing inner strength. The days continued, each blending into the next, filled with work, small acts of defiance, and quiet reflection. The girl learned patience, observing the world around her and understanding that change, if it came, would come slowly. She also learned caution, recognizing which words and actions could bring punishment and which could protect her. Through this careful observation, she navigated the harsh environment with increasing skill, balancing survival with the preservation of her inner world. In the quietest moments, when the farm slept and the wind carried the scent of grass and earth, the girl allowed herself to hope. She imagined a future in which she could return to her family, feel the sun on her face without fear, and run through open fields once more. She imagined a future in which she could speak her own words, make her own choices, and live with the freedom she had once taken for granted. These dreams became her motivation, the invisible thread that connected her to life beyond the farm. Though life was harsh, the girl began to see that she could endure. She could survive the cruelty of others, the endless labor, and the loneliness of captivity. She could hold onto her memories, her dreams, and her quiet courage. Each day, she grew stronger, more aware of herself, and more determined to maintain the spark of hope that refused to die. And though she did not yet know it, her inner strength was beginning to awaken something greater. The lessons she learned on the farm, patience, observation, endurance, and quiet defiance, were shaping her into a person capable of facing challenges far beyond the labor she endured. She was preparing unknowingly for a moment that would test her courage, challenge her fears, and reveal the depth of her spirit in a way she had never imagined. For now, she endured. She worked, she remembered, she dreamed, and she held onto the invisible thread of hope. The farm was harsh, the world outside distant and unknown, yet within her, a quiet strength was growing, a strength that would one day lead her to face the light of the sun, to confront the world, and to reclaim a part of herself that no captivity could ever take away. The girl had survived many months on the farm, learning its routines and discovering small ways to endure the endless work. Yet her life remained harsh, and her heart still ached for the freedom and warmth of her home. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more observant, but she remained a captive, her spirit constrained by the walls, the labor, and the constant watch of others. Every day was a battle to keep her hope alive, and every night she clung to memories of her family and the songs that had once carried her through the open fields. The rancher, a man of stern authority and unspoken contradictions, had begun to notice the girl in a way that others did not. He saw the quiet determination in her eyes, the way she worked tirelessly despite exhaustion, and the moments when she seemed to retreat into herself, lost in thought. He recognized that she was not like the others who worked on the farm. There was a spark within her, a resilience that refused to be crushed by the labor or the harsh conditions. He was unsure what to do with this knowledge. Part of him admired her spirit, yet another part reminded him that she was still his responsibility, a captive on his land, and bound by the rules he enforced. One afternoon, as the sun hung high in the sky, casting golden light over the fields, the rancher called the girl aside. His voice was firm, yet there was a subtle softness she had not noticed before. She approached cautiously, unsure if she had done something wrong or if he intended to punish her. The other workers had long ago learned to fear his presence, but she had learned to observe and read the quiet cues that hinted at his moods. Today, there was something different in the way he looked at her, something that made her heart race with curiosity and anxiety. "You have been working well," he said, his eyes studying her face. "But there is something more important than labor. There is something you need to see, something you need to feel." The girl blinked, uncertain. She had no idea what he meant. She had learned to obey his instructions, to follow the routines, and to endure the tasks he assigned. But this was different. His words hinted at something beyond the farm, beyond work, and beyond her understanding. Fear and curiosity mingled in her chest, and she nodded silently, waiting for him to explain. He led her away from the fields, past the barns and the animals, to a quiet spot on the edge of the property. Here, the world seemed different. The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying the scent of grass and earth. The sky stretched wide above them, and the sunlight fell softly on her skin. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet drawn to the moment. The rancher stopped and turned to face her, his gaze steady. "You have been through much," he said. "I know it is hard, but there is a way to see the world differently, to understand that even in hardship, there is something no one can take from you." The girl did not understand. Her mind raced with questions. What could no one take from her? She had lost her freedom, her family, her home. What could possibly remain that was untouched by pain? The rancher continued, his voice calm but firm. "I want you to look at the sun." The girl stared at him, confused. Look at the sun. It was bright, almost blinding. She had always loved the sunlight in her village, felt its warmth on her face as she ran through the hills, but she had never been told to focus on it, to really see it. Now, the rancher wanted her to face it directly. Fear rose in her chest. She remembered stories she had heard from her father, tales of people being hurt by the sun, and she hesitated. "Why?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling. "Because," he said, "you need to see the world as it truly is. Not as a place of suffering, but as a place where strength and courage can grow. You have survived much, and you are stronger than you know. But to truly understand that, you must face the light. You must look at the sun and let it fill you with what you have been missing." The girl shook her head. Her body wanted to turn away, to retreat to the shadows, to hide from the blinding light. But something in his words stirred a curiosity deep within her. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps there was more to see, more to feel than the farm and the endless labor. She took a hesitant step forward, then another, until she was standing fully in the sunlight, the warmth of it bathing her skin. At first, she could not look directly at the sun. Its brilliance was too strong, and her eyes watered as she struggled to focus. She remembered the riverside near her home, the sunlight reflecting on the water, and the gentle warmth on her face. Slowly, she forced herself to take a deep breath and raise her eyes. The sun was blinding, yes, but it was also illuminating. She could see the wide expanse of the land, the rolling fields, and the trees swaying in the breeze. She felt small, fragile, and yet strangely alive. The rancher watched her silently, giving her the space to adjust, to experience the moment in her own way. He did not speak, but his presence was steady, grounding. She could feel his gaze, not as a threat, but as a support, a reminder that she was not entirely alone in this moment of discovery. As she continued to look at the sun, she began to feel something she had not felt in months: strength. Not the kind that came from muscles or labor, but the kind that came from within, from a sense of self, from the recognition that she was still alive, still capable, still herself. She felt courage rising in her chest, a quiet but insistent force that refused to be diminished by the hardships she had endured. Tears streamed down her face, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sensation of awakening. She realized that she had been surviving, yes, but she had also been hiding, retreating into memories and dreams to escape the harshness of reality. Now, in the sunlight, she understood that she could face the world directly, even if it was difficult, even if it was painful. She could meet the brightness with her eyes open and her heart strong. The rancher spoke again, softly. "Do you see? This light cannot hurt you if you face it with courage. You have the strength to endure, to grow, and to reclaim what is yours inside. The world may be harsh, but your spirit is your own." The girl nodded, swallowing hard. She felt a shift within her, a transformation that she could not yet fully understand. She had always been taught to obey, to endure, to survive, but now she sensed a new dimension to her existence. She was not only surviving, she was beginning to awaken, to recognize the power within herself that no one could take away. For the first time, she felt a connection not just to the sunlight, but to life itself. The warmth on her skin, the brightness of the sky, the gentle movement of the wind, they were all reminders that she was part of a world far larger than the farm and far larger than her suffering. She began to feel a sense of agency, a small but vital understanding that she could influence her own life, even in small ways. The rancher stepped back, giving her space to absorb the moment. He did not offer more words, for none were needed. The girl stood there, facing the sun, feeling a quiet but powerful awakening within herself. She realized that she had endured far more than most could imagine, and yet she was still capable of growth, courage, and resilience. In that moment, she understood something profound. Even in captivity, even in hardship, there is a part of each person that cannot be taken away. Her spirit, her memories, her courage, they were hers alone. No matter what the farm demanded of her, no matter how harsh the labor, no matter how long the days or dark the nights, this inner strength was untouchable. The sunlight continued to shine, and the girl kept her eyes raised, feeling the warmth, feeling the light, feeling the life around her. She could still cry, she could still feel sorrow, but she could also feel hope, courage, and determination. She realized that her journey was far from over, but she had taken a vital first step toward reclaiming herself, toward understanding that strength comes not only from survival, but from the willingness to face the world directly, with eyes wide open and heart brave. And though she did not yet know what lay ahead, she felt ready to face it. The farm, the labor, the fear, they were still part of her life, but they no longer defined her completely. She had looked at the sun. She had faced the light. And in doing so, she had begun to find the power within herself to endure, to grow, and, one day, to reclaim the freedom and life she longed for. After that day in the sunlight, the girl felt a change within herself that she could not fully explain. The warmth on her skin, the brightness of the world around her, and the feeling of the sun filling her with light stayed with her, even when she returned to the harsh routines of the farm. She had faced the sun, and in doing so, she had discovered a part of herself that could not be taken away. Each morning, as she rose before dawn to begin her work, she carried this new strength quietly in her chest, a secret flame that guided her through the long hours. At first, the change was subtle. She moved with more confidence in the fields, her steps steadier, her hands working with skill and care. She no longer flinched at the smallest command or feared the sharp words of the rancher and the other workers. Instead, she listened carefully, observed more closely, and acted with precision. She realized that surviving was not just about obeying. It was about understanding the world around her and finding the space where she could exercise control, however small. The rancher noticed this shift immediately. He saw the difference in her posture, the steadiness in her eyes, and the quiet determination in her movements. He had always recognized her strength, but now it was visible, undeniable, and commanding. For the first time, he treated her with something closer to respect, though his stern exterior remained. There were no dramatic gestures, no praise, just a subtle acknowledgement in the way he assigned tasks, a nod of approval when she completed a difficult chore efficiently. It was enough for the girl to notice, and it gave her a renewed sense of purpose. Her inner awakening also changed the way she interacted with the other workers. She had always kept her distance, fearful of their judgment or cruelty, but now she found herself offering quiet kindness when she could. She helped an older worker carry a heavy load, shared a small piece of bread with a younger girl, and offered gentle words when someone seemed overwhelmed. These small acts of compassion, though unnoticed by most, strengthened her connection to the farm world and reminded her that even in a place of hardship, there was room for humanity. The girl also began to see the beauty in the world around her in a way she had not noticed before. The sunrise became more than a signal to start work. It was a moment of quiet hope, a reminder that each day held the potential for something new. She watched the animals with careful attention, marveling at the way they moved and interacted, learning lessons in patience and observation. The wind in the trees, the patterns of clouds in the sky, and the gentle rustling of the river became small sources of comfort and inspiration. Even in captivity, she found ways to feel connected to life, to nature, and to the world she longed to return to. One afternoon, as she worked in the fields, the rancher approached her again. His voice was calm, and his eyes carried a weight of seriousness she had not seen before. "You are stronger than you know," he said, "but strength alone is not enough. You must also learn to trust yourself and to face the challenges that come without fear. The sun has shown you the light, but now you must carry it with you in every step you take." The girl listened carefully, her heart beating faster. She did not fully understand what he meant, but she felt the truth in his words. The sunlight she had faced had awakened her courage, but the real challenge was applying that courage to her life, to her choices, and to the world around her. She realized that she could no longer simply endure. She had to act, to make decisions, and to reclaim parts of herself that had been hidden beneath fear and suffering. Over the following weeks, the girl began to take small but significant steps toward autonomy. She started organizing her tasks more efficiently, finding ways to complete her work with less effort while maintaining quality. She spoke up when something seemed unfair, choosing her words carefully but firmly. She noticed small injustices on the farm and found ways to address them subtly, helping others without drawing the wrath of those in authority. Each action, though modest, strengthened her confidence and reinforced the idea that she had control over her life, even within the constraints of the farm. The rancher continued to observe her, sometimes silently, sometimes offering guidance when he saw opportunities for growth. He encouraged her to trust her instincts, to notice the patterns around her, and to understand that the world was not only harsh, it could also be navigated with intelligence, patience, and courage. His mentorship was unusual, a strange mixture of authority and encouragement, but it challenged the girl to expand her thinking and to test the limits of her own strength. The girl also began to reflect more deeply on her past, her family, and the life she had lost. The memories that had once brought only sorrow now became a source of motivation. She remembered the songs her mother sang, the stories her father told, and the laughter of her friends. She realized that these memories were not just reminders of what she had lost, they were fuel for what she could still achieve. They connected her to her true self, the part of her that had always been brave, curious, and determined. One evening, as the sun set and the sky blazed with colors of orange and pink, the girl sat quietly by a small stream on the edge of the farm. She watched the reflection of the sky in the water, feeling the gentle current on her fingers, and allowed herself to dream. She imagined running through the hills near her village, feeling the wind on her face, and hearing the voices of her family calling her name. She imagined a life where she could make her own choices, where freedom was not just a memory but a reality. These visions were bittersweet. They reminded her of what she had lost, yet they also filled her with hope, a belief that she could, one day, reclaim her life. The rancher found her there, but he did not speak immediately. He watched her in silence, recognizing the quiet determination that radiated from her. Finally, he said, "You have come far. You are learning not just to endure, but to live." This is the moment where your spirit begins to guide you, where courage becomes more than a feeling, it becomes action. The girl turned to him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude, curiosity, and determination. "I want to be strong," she said softly. "I want to survive, but I also want to live truly live." The rancher nodded. "And you will. But remember, strength is not only about facing hardship. It is about choosing how to respond, deciding what is right, and holding on to hope, even when the world seems dark. The sun has shown you the light. Now you must carry it inside yourself, in every decision, every action, and every step forward." From that day forward, the girl began to apply her newfound understanding in practical ways. She took initiative with her work, finding better methods and solving problems without waiting for instructions. She quietly protected the younger or weaker workers, sharing her knowledge and helping them avoid mistakes that could bring punishment. She learned to navigate the farm with intelligence, avoiding unnecessary risks while asserting herself when needed. Every small success built her confidence, reinforcing the idea that she was more than a captive. She was a capable, resourceful, and courageous individual. Her internal transformation also influenced her emotional state. She cried less from sorrow and more from the recognition of her growth. She allowed herself to feel joy in small moments, the taste of a well-earned meal, the warmth of sunlight on her face, the laughter of a worker she had helped. These moments, though fleeting, were powerful reminders that life could still hold beauty and meaning, even in the midst of hardship. The rancher continued to guide her subtly, offering lessons not through direct commands, but through challenges that encouraged her to think, observe, and act. He placed her in situations that required judgment, patience, and courage, allowing her to make choices and learn from the outcomes. These experiences were difficult, sometimes frustrating, but they reinforced the lessons of the sunlight, the importance of facing the world, trusting herself, and carrying her inner strength forward. The girl's confidence grew steadily. She began to speak with quiet authority when addressing workers, offer solutions to problems, and make decisions that benefited not only herself but others on the farm. She learned to balance caution with initiative, patience with action, and observation with courage. Each day, she became more aware of her own capabilities, more attuned to the world around her, and more determined to maintain the flame of hope that had been kindled when she first faced the sun. And though the farm remained a place of labor and challenge, the girl no longer felt entirely bound by it. Her mind, her spirit, and her courage had expanded beyond the physical constraints of her environment. She had discovered that freedom was not only a matter of escaping the farm, it was also a matter of holding onto her inner strength, choosing her actions wisely, and embracing the light within herself. The girl had changed. She was no longer simply a captive enduring hardship. She was a young woman awakening to her own power, her own courage, and her own potential. She had faced the sun, and now she was learning to carry that light with her, illuminating the path forward, guiding her steps, and preparing her for the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. Though she did not yet know what the future held, she felt ready to face it. The farm, the labor, and the harshness of her life were still present, but they no longer defined her completely. She had discovered a strength that could not be taken away, a courage that could not be extinguished, and a sense of self that would guide her toward freedom, both within and, eventually, beyond the farm. Time on the farm had taught the girl more than she ever imagined. She had endured hardship, faced fear, and discovered a strength she did not know existed. The lessons of patience, courage, and observation had shaped her into someone who could not only survive but begin to thrive, even in a place where freedom was limited. She moved through her days with a quiet confidence, carrying the inner light she had first discovered when she faced the sun. That light, small but powerful, guided her in every choice, every action, and every step forward. The girl began to take more control over her life, in ways both practical and emotional. She organized her daily tasks with care, finding efficiency in her labor while maintaining quality. She learned to anticipate the needs of the farm, tending to animals before they needed attention, preparing the fields before the workers asked, and noticing small details that others overlooked. Each successful task brought her not only recognition from the rancher, but also a deep sense of accomplishment. She realized that her actions, though constrained by the farm, could still influence her environment and create a measure of control over her life. Her interactions with the other workers also changed. She became a quiet leader among them, helping those who struggled, sharing advice, and protecting the vulnerable when possible. Though she was careful not to draw attention from the harshest authorities, she found ways to support others, creating small networks of kindness and cooperation. These connections strengthened her sense of purpose and reminded her that even in captivity, human bonds could flourish. She felt less alone, not because her circumstances had changed, but because she had learned to navigate them with empathy, intelligence, and courage. The rancher, who had once been a distant figure of authority, now took on the role of a subtle mentor. He challenged her with tasks that required judgment, patience, and courage, encouraging her to think independently and take initiative. Sometimes his guidance was silent, a watchful eye, a nod of approval, a deliberate pause to let her figure out a problem. Other times he spoke with quiet wisdom, offering insights into the patterns of the farm, the behavior of people, and the lessons hidden in daily life. His mentorship was unusual, a mixture of authority and encouragement, but it gave the girl the space to grow while still providing structure and safety. With each passing day, the girl felt more connected to her own potential. She began to see herself not only as a worker, but as a person capable of making choices and shaping her own path. The labor remained difficult, the farm's rules unyielding, and the world beyond distant, yet she had discovered a sense of autonomy that no captivity could take away. She was learning to carry the light of the sun within her, not just as a memory of courage, but as an active force guiding her decisions and actions. One morning, as the sun rose over the fields, casting golden light across the land, the girl made a decision. She would no longer wait for freedom to come to her. She would find ways to reclaim pieces of it in her daily life. She began small, asserting herself in conversations with the workers, organizing her tasks more independently, and taking initiative without being asked. She discovered that these small acts of autonomy, while seemingly insignificant, gave her a sense of power and control she had never experienced before. The rancher observed her with a mixture of curiosity and approval. He had watched her transformation from a frightened, submissive girl to a confident, thoughtful young woman capable of facing challenges with determination. He recognized that the lessons of the sun, the courage to face fear and the strength to endure, were now embedded in her spirit. He allowed her more responsibility, trusting her judgment and giving her opportunities to lead in small ways. The girl embraced these responsibilities, feeling a growing sense of pride and self-worth. As she continued to grow, the girl also reflected on her past and the family she had lost. She carried their memory not as a burden of sorrow, but as a source of motivation. She remembered her mother's songs, her father's stories, and the laughter of her friends. These memories fueled her determination to live fully, even in captivity, and to embrace the strength and courage she had discovered within herself. She realized that freedom was not only a physical state, but also a mental and emotional one. She could claim freedom within her mind and spirit, even while bound by the farm's routines. One afternoon, a challenge arose on the farm that tested everything she had learned. A sudden storm approached, and the workers scrambled to secure the animals and protect the crops. Chaos erupted as the wind whipped through the fields, rain fell in sheets, and the thunder rolled across the sky. Many workers panicked, unsure of what to do, but the girl remained calm. She had observed the patterns of the farm, studied the animals, and understood how to act efficiently under pressure. She directed others, offered guidance, and took decisive action to protect both the animals and the crops. Her calm, confident leadership in the face of danger earned the respect of everyone around her, including the rancher. After the storm passed, the girl stood in the sunlight once more, the same sunlight she had first faced months ago. She felt the warmth on her skin, the brightness of the world around her, and the satisfaction of knowing she had navigated a crisis with courage and skill. The sun no longer represented fear or challenge. It represented the strength she carried within herself, the resilience she had nurtured, and the hope that she could continue to grow, no matter the circumstances. The rancher approached her, his expression unreadable but his eyes showing a glimmer of pride. "You have come far," he said quietly. "You have learned to face fear, to trust yourself, and to carry your own light. The farm will continue to test you, but you are ready. You are stronger than you know, and your spirit is yours alone." The girl nodded, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She understood now that her journey was not just about surviving the farm. It was about reclaiming her life, her courage, and her sense of self. She had faced the sun, endured hardship, and learned to act with wisdom and strength. The farm, the labor, and the challenges were still part of her life, but they no longer defined her. She had discovered a freedom within herself that no one could take away. Over the following weeks, the girl continued to apply her lessons. She worked efficiently, helped others, and carried herself with quiet confidence. She noticed small opportunities to improve life on the farm, offering solutions that benefited everyone. She also took time to reflect, to dream, and to imagine the life she hoped to reclaim fully one day. These moments of reflection were sacred, reminders that even in captivity, she could nurture her spirit and preserve her inner light. Her growth did not go unnoticed by the rancher. He began to treat her as a valued member of the farm, giving her responsibilities that required judgment, leadership, and initiative. He trusted her decisions, allowed her more autonomy, and observed her as she guided others with patience and intelligence. The girl embraced these opportunities, feeling the quiet satisfaction of mastering her circumstances and demonstrating the strength she had cultivated within herself. In time, the girl realized that her transformation was complete. She was no longer the frightened, submissive captive who had arrived at the farm months ago. She had become a young woman of courage, wisdom, and resilience, capable of facing challenges with confidence and grace. She had discovered a freedom that existed beyond physical constraints, a freedom rooted in strength, courage, and the ability to trust herself. And though she remained on the farm, her spirit was unbound. She had learned to carry the light of the sun within her, to face each day with determination, and to navigate the world with intelligence and empathy. She had reclaimed her sense of self, her courage, and her hope, proving that even in the harshest circumstances, the human spirit can endure, grow, and triumph. As the sun set one evening, casting its warm glow across the fields, the girl stood quietly, feeling the wind in her hair and the soft earth beneath her feet. She remembered the moments of fear, the labor, the challenges, and the lessons she had learned. She remembered the sunlight that had awakened her spirit, the guidance of the rancher, and the quiet victories that had strengthened her resolve. She closed her eyes and let the warmth of the sun fill her, knowing that she carried this light within her always. She understood now that freedom was not only a matter of leaving the farm, it was a matter of embracing her inner strength, acting with courage, and trusting herself. She had survived, endured, and grown, and in doing so, she had reclaimed her life in ways that no one could ever take away. The farm would continue to demand labor, the world would continue to present challenges, and life would not always be easy. But the girl was ready. She had faced the sun, discovered her courage, and learned to carry the light within herself. She had become a living testament to resilience, hope, and the unbreakable power of the human spirit. And so, standing in the sunlight, feeling the warmth on her skin and the strength in her heart, she smiled. She was free, not in the way she had first imagined, but in the way that mattered most. She was free within herself, and that freedom would guide her through whatever the future held.